I'm assuming everybody watched those videos, but just in case, I'm going to say a couple things about Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban before we start on Goblet of Fire. And it's going to be pretty much the end of each of those. In the Chamber of Secrets, towards the very end in the chapter, The Heir of Slytherin, and I've got to make sure I do not get down a rabbit trail. Let me back up just a bit. How does Harry learn about Tom Riddle? Louder? The diary? How else? That's one part.
Ron
Keep going.
saw his award to his
Yeah, Ron has to do that detention, polishing all the awards and stuff, and he sees Tom Riddle got an award for the school for doing some great thing, okay? And then the diary, and he does what with the diary?
spills ink.
He spills ink, and then what does he do? After that.
Writes in it. Well, he notices that there's no ink covering it, and then he writes in it.
Is that all? He goes into it. Remember? He falls into the diary and sees Tom Riddle's supposed memories, okay? This is going to be an idea that we're going to see later in other books, this idea that we can enter memories. And one of the things I think that Rowling is interested with there is, what do our memories present to us? Because in some instances in the books, it's like the memory is a film rolling. And it's like photographic evidence. Okay? There's going to be a problem with that in some of the later books. Goblet of Fire later. Because what we're going to see in some of those memories, it's going to be a person's memory of something, but that person will not actually have been present for part of what is shown, so to speak, in the memory. Okay? It's an interesting issue. Anyways, towards the end of Azkaban. So Harry's found out how to get into the chamber. He's down there. He's with Tom Riddle. Okay? And Riddle has sicked the basilisk on him. And Fawkes shows up. Harry doesn't understand yet why Fawkes has showed up. And Harry's been stabbed by the fang of the basilisk. And we're told on 321. Okay? So Harry's sitting against, the cave wall. Fawkes is right near him. And Tom Riddle, a.k.a. I am Lord Voldemort, says, I'm going to sit here and watch you die, Harry Potter. Take your time. I'm in no hurry. Harry felt drowsy. Everything around him seemed to be spinning. So ends the famous Harry Potter, says Riddle. Alone in the Chamber of Secrets, forsaken by his friends. Like what? Like the first chapter, Harry thinks. Defeated at last by the Dark Lord he so unwisely challenged. You'll be back with your dear mudblood mother soon, Harry. What does that mean? He'll be back with his dear mudblood mother soon. He'll be dead, right? But is to be dead to be back with those who died before? Only if you have a certain spiritual framework or understanding of life and something after life. Right? That only happens if, metaphorically, it only happens if you believe that there is a soul and it goes on somewhere else after death. Okay? Which apparently Tom Riddle does believe that because he makes this statement. She bought you, 12 years of borrowed time. How did she buy him 12 years of borrowed time?
Where's that place?
Back at the end of the first book. When Voldemort says, your mother died what? Trying to save you. Okay? And now, in this passage, he says, that's it. She died trying to save you. That's a very powerful spell. I should have realized it. That is, this is another oddity to me. The 16-year-old, the ghost, so to speak, the unformed spirit that's kind of hovering there, even though it can hold a wand and stuff, of 16-year-old Tom Riddle understands that within, 5 minutes of Harry saying, my mother died to save me? At the time that he curses Harry, 68, I think it is, year old Tom Riddle didn't understand what would happen if he killed Harry's mother when she's outstretched in front of him. To me, that's a logical problem, okay? So, she bought you 12 years of borrowed time, but Lord Voldemort got you in the end as you knew he must. Why? Most powerful dark wizard who ever lived. Even more powerful, apparently, than Salazar Slytherin. Notice Harry's thoughts, because the next line. If this is dying, thought Harry, it's not so bad. What did Dumbledore tell Harry at the end of the first book? What is death? To the well-organized mind, it's just the next adventure. That is, if your mind is organized, Dumbledore doesn't say what that means. We find out what that means by reading all 7 books. All 7 books are about Harry learning how to die well. And the well part is the most important part. Because in one sense, we all know how to die. Why? Because we all know we will die. It's how we die that is important. Harry thinks, if this is dying, not so bad. What does he mean? Now, there's 2 possible answers. One, because of what is literally happening at that moment in the book. Okay? Fawkes is right next to him and crying, tears are dropping down on the wound. We've already found out, Harry remembers it later, Phoenix tears have great healing powers. So mentally, Harry thinks, I am dying, but it's not so bad. That's indicating what? Maybe his mind isn't fully organized, but it's pretty well organized. Okay? After all, why is he down there in the Chamber of Secrets? What did he go down for? What was his purpose? Rescue Ginny, okay? Save her at all costs? Willing to sacrifice himself? The whole 9 yards. Even the pain was leaving him. And now he remembers tears. But was this dying? Okay? Notice the pain was leaving him before he thinks, am I really dying? Okay? So, skip a little bit more. Fawkes defeats the basilisk and stuff. Harry goes up to the staff room. Dumbledore's there. The Weasleys are there. Dumbledore, reads Harry's mind, so to speak, but looking at Harry's face, he gets everybody out so he can have his debriefing session. We have one of these in almost every one of the books. Okay? And Dumbledore says, top of 332, first of all, Harry, I want to thank you. You must have shown me real loyalty down in the chamber. Remember, just before Dumbledore has to leave, before he's taken by Malfoy and Fudge, he says, I will only truly have left Hogwarts when no one here is yet or is still loyal to me. And he looks in the corner where Harry, Ron, and Hermione are hiding under the thing. Okay? Or Harry and Ron. So, he shows Dumbledore loyalty, okay? And then Harry goes, Riddle said we're alike. What problem is Harry having that Frodo had? When Gandalf said, Gollum's a hobbit. I can't be like him. Okay? Strange likenesses. Dumbledore. Did he now? And notice Dumbledore's reaction. He doesn't explain. What does he do? He plays both teacher and counselor. Teacher. He asks a question. Socratic method. Counselor. And how does that make you feel, Harry? How do you like to know that you're similar to Satan? You know? I'm not like him. I'm a Gryffindor. And then he kind of puts his head down. The Sorting Hat wanted to put me in Slytherin. And what does Harry think? I should have been in Slytherin. The Sorting Hat knew interiorly I belong in Slytherin. I'd have done well in Slytherin. Everyone thought I was Slytherin's heir. I can speak Parseltongue. Dumbledore. He tackles the last point first and then moves back. You can speak Parseltongue, Harry, because Lord Voldemort, who is the last remaining ancestor of Salazar Slytherin. Does yours read ancestor? Anybody know? It's the wrong word. If he were an ancestor of Salazar Slytherin, what would he be? He'd be older than Salazar Slytherin. The word should be descendant. Okay? Poor editing. Really, really poor editing. At least in this one. Probably in more recently printed editions, it's probably been changed. So, because he can speak Parseltongue. And then Dumbledore says this. This is really, really important for later on. Unless I'm much mistaken, he transferred some of his own powers to you the night he gave you that scar. Not something he intended to do. And then Harry does something that we're going to see Harry do from here on out. I can't remember any instances of Harry doing this in the first book. Harry's going to take what Dumbledore says and he's going to rephrase it. Harry's going to put it in words he would use. That is, Harry is going to interpret it for us so that what Dumbledore says gets put into our minds by how Harry reinterprets it. So, Dumbledore said, unless I'm much mistaken, he transferred some of his own powers to you the night he gave you that scar. Not something he intended to do. Harry, Voldemort put a bit of himself in me? Very different meaning than what Dumbledore said. Okay? So now Harry thinks, I got a bit of Voldemort in me. It certainly seems so, says Dumbledore. Harry, so I should be in Slytherin. If I've got a bit of Voldemort in me, then Slytherin is where I belong. The Sorting Hat could see Slytherin's power in me. Dumbledore cuts him off. That's what the and it dash. I don't think the dash means Harry pauses. I think the dash means Dumbledore interrupts. And it put you in Gryffindor. Listen to me, Harry. And it's almost like he grabs him by the collar and shakes him. Listen. Pay attention now. You happen to have many qualities Salazar Slytherin prized in his handpicked students. And he gives some of those qualities. You have Parseltongue. You show resourcefulness, right? You show determination. You show a certain disregard for the rules. I mean, he puts on that invisibility cloak and he goes wherever he wants, even though it's against the rules. Yet the Sorting Hat placed you in Gryffindor. You know why that was. Come on, Harry. Think. Dig deep. Because I asked not to go in Slytherin? Exactly. What's Dumbledore's point?
He knew better.
Louder?
He knew better.
He knew better. which makes you very different from Tom Riddle. And here's the money quote. Each book has a money quote. The money quote from the first one is about death and a well-organized mind. This one, it is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. Go back to the first book, first or second chapter. Dumbledore and McGonagall are talking there at the street corner. What are they talking about? They're talking about Voldemort. They're talking about Dumbledore. And McGonagall says, when Dumbledore says, Voldemort has powers I will never have, only because you are too noble to use them. In other words, he chooses not to. It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. What does that mean, that show what we truly are? Okay, keep going. They reveal the inner self, which we're going to see in the next book. Okay? Harry's going to learn a spell. He's going to learn a spell that a lot of adult wizards are unable to do. And he's going to learn that at 13 years old. And he can do that spell because of what he really is in here. And it's important that I'm doing in here because it comes out from here, both metaphorically, figuratively, and literally. Okay? Harry sits motionless. He doesn't have a clue what Dumbledore is talking about. And so Dumbledore says, "You need proof, Harry? Look at this." And he hands him the sword. And Harry looks at it. And there on the hilt is engraved, Godric Gryffindor. Godric. Anybody know what the name means? The Reach is related to Reich, like in the Third Reich. It means kingdom, or place in which one holds power. Okay? God's kingdom, Gryffindor. Okay? And we already talked about a Gryffindor. A Gryffindor, eagle, sky, heaven, and lion, king of the beasts, lion of the tribe of Judah, all kinds of biblical stuff there, and d'or, of gold. So, only a true Gryffindor, Dumbledore then says, could have pulled that out of the hat, Harry. What does he mean? Louder.
He's really angry, like that's where he's supposed to be.
Okay, true. What else does it mean?
He could be truly.
Harry's emblematic of the things that are emblematic of Gryffindor, the bravery, the...
True. All that's true. What else does it mean?
Could be blood.
Louder.
His blood.
He is a blood relative of Godric Gryffindor. Okay? So we had a blood relative of Salazar Slytherin fighting a blood relative of Godric Gryffindor. We're going to find out in a later book. The original four founders, Gryffindor and Salazar, were best friends. They were the tightest of the four. And they had the biggest break. Okay? It's pretty important. So, finish that book. Malfoy comes in, and we have Dobby curse him because he's going to hurt Harry, etc. Harry frees Dobby and such. Different than in the film. That is how Harry does it. Is different than in the film. Because in the film, Harry stuffs the sock in the book. Okay? In the book, Harry stuffs the diary in the sock. So in order for Malfoy to get the diary out of the sock, he has to hold on to the sock, pull the diary out, and then dirty, smelly sock. In the book, he could just do this. In the film, he could just do this. But he doesn't. It makes more sense in the book. Okay? Chambers, prisoner of Azkaban. Skip everything at the well, don't skip everything at the beginning, but the all important chapter, chapter 19. The servant of Lord Voldemort, okay, is whom? Wormtail, Peter Pettigrew, okay? Everybody thought it was whom? Sirius Black, okay? What was the prophecy Harry heard from Sybil Trelawney?
The servant will return.
The servant of the Lord will return. He's been chained these 13 years, blah, 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 okay? Notice, by the way, her name. Sybil is a prophetess. How good are her prophecies?
They're a little wacky.
Dumbledore says at the end of this book, I need to give her a raise. She's now had 2 correct predictions or prophecies. Okay? Somebody else that is mentioned in the book, Cassandra Vablotsky, or I always mix up these two, the last name. It's either Vablotsky, or Vlabotsky. Whatever the name, real person. Okay? A real fortune teller, psychic, whatever you want to call her, etc., in the books. Okay? So, they get to the Whomping Willow, they get to the Shrieking Shack. We find out why the Whomping Willow was planted, the whole 9 yards. They're there, they make Ron's rat scabbers transform. So this rat that Ron has had for how long now?
Very, very long time.
12 years. Our kids had rats and gerbils and hamsters, and they all die after 2 or 3 years. Okay? This thing just keeps on chugging along. 374, 375. So they make Pettigrew take his proper shape, and he starts begging mercy and such, and he tells them, 374, when Sirius says, you sold Lily and James to Voldemort. Do you deny it? Sirius, what could I have done? The Dark Lord, you have no idea. He has weapons. Go away, Siri. He has weapons you can't imagine. I was scared, Sirius. I was never brave like you and Remus and James. I never meant it to happen. He who must not be named forced me. Black, don't lie. You've been passing information to him for a year before Lily and James died. A year before Lily and James died is when? Right after Harry's birth. Okay? He was taking over everywhere. What was there to be gained by refusing him? Very, very similar to what Saruman says to Gandalf about aligning themselves with Sauron. His power is rising. He will be great. What's Peter's answer? He's going to be in power. Why not join with him? Notice, what was there to be gained? What does that mean in our language? How would we put it? What's in it for me? Look at Black's response. What was there to be gained by fighting the most evil wizard who has ever existed? Innocent lives, Peter. Notice he doesn't say something like, it's the noble thing to do. Find your inner virtue, sacrifice. I mean, that's going to be implied. Innocent lives. Whose innocent lives? Muggles, the 13 that Peter Pettigrew killed, James and Lily. Okay? We're gonna find out a lot more in book 5. We're going to have a whole series of names of people who were killed during Voldemort's rise to power. Those people, that group, is going to be kind of juxtaposed with this new developing Order of the Phoenix, which we'll talk about when we get to book 5. Pettigrew, you don't understand. He would have killed me, Sirius. Okay, does Sirius not understand? No, he understands very well. Then you should have died. Died rather than betray your friends. Notice the sentence doesn't just end there. Black's next words show us what he truly is. He's telling us of a decision he and Lupin and James and Lily would have made for him, as we would have done for you. Now, what was Peter among the four? What place was he in, let's say? The lowest. He was the weakest, he was the most ineffectual, etc. And what are they saying? What does Sirius say? We would have died for you, Peter. We, the greatest of us, James, Sirius, vying for the top, Lupin, etc. Okay? Black and Lupin now stand shoulder to shoulder. That's a military analogy. They're lining up, going into battle, only the battle is against a rat, You should have realized, says Lupin, if Voldemort didn't kill you, we would. Is he aligning himself there with a murderous intent? No. For Lupin and Sirius, what is this? Is it revenge?
Justice.
A lot of people do say it's revenge. I don't think it is. I think in their mentality, they're not avenging James and Lily. I mean, Sirius might have some other motives than Lupin's. He's got, 13 years of prison. He was imprisoned for murder, and as he says, I want to do the murder I was found guilty of. Was he found guilty?
No, it was just go to prison.
He was never tried. He got sent off to wizarding prison to Azkaban without a trial, okay? So, Harry stops him, as he always does. And we see the Dementor's kiss, Hermione's secret. We're going to skip all that. Dumbledore and Harry talk when they go up. Dumbledore says, I can't make people see the truth. This is in the chapter Hermione's secret. And I want to get to Owl Post again, page 425. Almost done with these, and then we'll get into Goblet of Fire. Harry says, bottom of 425. It didn't make any difference. This is after Sirius and Buckbeak escape. Okay? Snape is spitting nuclear weapons mad. It didn't make any difference. Pettigrew got away. Dumbledore. Didn't make any difference. Harry, you helped uncover the truth. You saved an innocent man from a terrible fate. What was the terrible fate? The Dementor's kiss. What does a Dementor's kiss do to you?
Steals your soul.
It sucks out your soul. So it kills you? No. We kind of tend to think if your soul leaves your body, what's left? A corpse. In this instance, it's not a corpse. What is it?
Just a shell of a human being.
What do you mean a shell of humanity?
Like, you're still there, but you don't have the things that make you you.
Okay, I was going to say, what is the you that you're referring to? Character, the soul. So what's left? According to some doctors and such, probably most, what's left is a person in what's called a permanent vegetative state. That is, they will never recover. There's nothing there but the body. Sometimes the body will stay alive on its own. Other times it's kept alive through artificial means. Okay? Interestingly, over the last several years, there have been more and more instances, and now there are studies coming out showing that people who are in so-called permanent vegetative states, some of them at least we know, are entirely aware of what is going on around, even though their brain does not show any activity going on. They heard conversations, they heard people saying, it's time to pull the plug, and they're inside going, no! Because people have come out of so-called permanent vegetative states. Okay? Interesting quandary. So, Harry mentions the prophecy. And Dumbledore says the thing about should give her a pay raise. And Harry's, but like, I stopped, page 426, I stopped Sirius and Professor Lupin from killing Pettigrew. That makes it my fault if Voldemort comes back. Okay? What classes has Harry had this year that he is seemingly mentally discounting at this point? What new class? Divination. Talk to me about divination. What kind of class is that? How accurate is it? How fact-based is it? How useful is it?
Pretty imprecise.
It's pretty imprecise. That is a very good example of what's called extreme understatement. Okay? It's interesting that of all the branches of magic that are taught at Hogwarts, there's only one that has a real-world corollary. That is, you can't go anywhere in the world today and buy materials for transfiguration. You can't go anywhere and buy materials for defense against the dark arts. Okay? You can't go buy stuff for potions. Yeah, I know. But you can go to almost any town that has more than 50,000 people in it. And you can do what? You can go have your fortune read. You can look in a crystal ball. You can have your lines read. You can have tea leaves read. You can have tarot cards read. You can do all of the stuff that she does in here. Interesting that of all the, again, branches in the fictional world, this is the only one that has a real world corollary, and this is the only one that is presented by Dumbledore and McGonagall as being what in this world?
Silly.
Louder?
Silly.
Is it silly?
Just the way they view it.
Okay, it's hogwash.
Yeah.
It's charlatanry. Okay, it's fake. It's made up. How does everybody else view divination? Everybody, without exception, other than some of the schoolgirls. Oh, she's so wonderful. She's so deep. The teachers, I mean, it's all just nonsense. In fact, they wonder why in the world does Dumbledore keep her here? We're going to find out later. Okay. So Harry's doing what? I saved Peter Pettigrew by stopping Lupin and Sirius from killing him. Therefore, he thinks I am the one responsible should Peter Pettigrew run back, let's say scurry back like a rat, to Voldemort and help him rise again. What is Harry removing from Peter Pettigrew there? Agency, free will. His ability to do what? To choose, to make a choice that will show what he truly is. And we will see Peter Pettigrew in the remaining novels make choices. Okay? Most of them bad. Dumbledore explains, bottom of 426. It doesn't, Harry. You will not be at fault if Voldemort comes back. The consequences of our actions are always so complicated, so diverse, that predicting the future is a very difficult business indeed. Professor Trelawney, bless her, is living proof of that. you did a very noble thing in saving Pettigrew's life. But if he helps Voldemort back to power, Dumbledore again cuts him off. Dumbledore's not in the habit of cutting people off. He lets them express their ideas. Here, he wants to stop this train of thought from getting embedded in Harry's mind. He wants to try to root it out. Pettigrew owes his life to you. You have sent Voldemort a deputy who is in your debt. So you've sent to Voldemort to be his quote-unquote right-hand man, someone who owes something to you. When one wizard saves another wizard's life, it creates a certain bond between them. Give me an example. We were told something, alluded to something about this in the first book. We saw it expressed more here. We're going to hear it expressed even more later.
James saving Snape.
James saved Snape. Snape owes James something because of that. Or Snape owed James something because of it, or at least in Snape's mind he does. Okay? So, I'm much mistaken if Voldemort wants a servant in the debt of Harry Potter. Harry, I don't want a connection with Pettigrew. He's like, ew! This is magic at its deepest. It's most impenetrable. In other words, it cannot be explained. Trust me, the time may come when you will be very glad you saved Pettigrew's life. In other words, Frodo, the time may come when Bilbo's mercy and pity to Gollum will not only affect you, but all of Middle-earth. And then Dumbledore throws in the coup de grace. Your father would have saved Pettigrew's life too. Okay? And then he gives what, I wish he hadn't done this, my opinion. Oh, Harry, you did see prongs right again last night. Your father lives in you, Harry. All you have to do is think good thoughts, and he'll make you feel better. Okay? Why did I say think good thoughts? What do you need in order to do an expecto patronum? A happy memory. It's a Disney kind of thing. Okay? These two words, expecto, what does it mean? What word do we get from that, modern English? To expect. That O on the ending is an agency. It indicates I. It's first person. So I expect. But it's more than that. Okay? Patronum. Literally a patronus. What's a patronus? Anybody? Guardian. What else? Protector. Deliverer. We're actually even going to see the word savior used in the books. Okay? But expect literally means what? This part, not the O. Out of the pet, the chest. Out of Harry's chest is what? It's where his guardian, protector, deliverer, savior comes. It comes from within. It comes from outside. It does not come from somewhere out there. It's not because his father's animagiae form was a stag, necessarily, that Harry produces a patronum that looks like a stag. Yes, it is related because he's his father's son, but there's another reason. And part of it goes back to the first book.
It's because the stag is the only thing that can eat
You
the yew.
and live. Voldemort's wand is made out of yew and phoenix. Harry's is made out of holly and phoenix. Okay? But Harry's Patronus is what? It's a deer. It's not just it's not Bambi. Not little Bambi. Big Bambi with the full rack, you know. So, we get to the end. What's going to be the source of Harry's Patronus, seemingly, from here on until... What was his happy thought? His happy memory that enabled him to destroy, drive away the 100 Dementors.
Doesn't he say specifically it was just that he knew that he could? In the book. I think that.
Well,
Since he's seen it,
This-
like, it was
after he goes back in time,
Yeah.
or forward, whichever. Problem with every time travel is you end up with that time paradox. Okay. She was an idiot for introducing that idea. Because if you have a time turner, what should you be able to do with it? She tried to explain away this kind of stuff in Pottermore, and then she, got rid of Pottermore. What could they have done? Stop Voldemort from being born. That's it. No Dark Wizard. End of. Stop Hitler. Stop Genghis Khan. Pick your enemy. Okay. So, what have we seen now in the first 3 books before we jump into Goblet of Fire? What has Harry learned about the magical world? I mean, he's learned a lot, right? It's a lot deeper than he thought. That is, it is multi-layered, it is rich, it is diverse, okay? There are powers that he was unaware of when he was first introduced to it. He now knows you can go back in time, okay? He now knows Lord Voldemort, comes from a long line and all that kind of stuff. And he knows what about himself? He's got a godfather. That, in and of itself, gives us a whole wealth of information if we choose to look at it. Because what is a godfather?
It's the person who takes you if something happens to your parents.
Okay. That's one understanding of godfather. That's the secular
He has a.
form of godfather.
Like a steward of their faith.
Yeah. A godfather is one who is going to make sure you grow up knowing what is real. That, theologically speaking, knowing the tenets of your belief system. What does that imply? That implies James and Lily had one. Do the Dursleys? No. What do the Dursleys believe in? Money. Money in the good life, okay? Not knocking money in the good life, though Dumbledore does at the end of book 1. But suggesting that Harry has a godfather implies, at the very minimum, they went through the traditional Anglican process of going to a church and having him baptized and sprinkled. The reason I'm emphasizing this is we're going to see something in book 5. Harry's going to do something when somebody dies that is seemingly totally out of character. He buries a person and he puts a cross over that. Never have we heard Harry imply anything about, one, the person or person part that was being buried, and 2, about any belief on his own. Okay? So, having said all that, 1 through 3, have we seen anybody die? Nope. Have we heard about people dying? Yeah. Okay? Book 5. Where do 1 through 3 open? When you turn to the first chapter, where is it in 1 through 3?
Privet.
Number 4, Privet Drive. Book 4, The Riddle House, The Villagers of Little Hingleton. Not number 4, Privet Drive. What has Rowling just done? She changed it up. She broke our expectations. Because we've had this series of beginnings, we can... Siri, go away. Series, not Siri. We can kind of think book 4 is going to follow the same, what's called a formula. There is what's called formula fiction. Read a romance novel, a Harlequin romance kind of thing. They've all got the, the hunky guy, the heavy breast on the cover, etc. And they're all the same number of words, the same basic plot. There is literally what's called a tip sheet that romance authors follow for each publisher. Okay? You have to have these characters, there have to be these situations, and it has to resolve this way. And you have a certain number of words. Okay? Rowling knows, as she's writing this one, people are thinking, it's getting repetitive. And so what does she do? We open at a different location. We don't open with Harry. What do we see? First chapter.
Dead people.
Well, we see live people becoming dead people. Okay? We open with Frank Bryce. Okay? We open with the Riddle House. We hear a couple voices. We find out one of them is Peter Pettigrew. And we find out the other one is Your Lordship. He's not really a lord. By the way, that's one of the things that distinguishes the wizarding world from our world. There is no aristocracy. There's no king, there's no queen, there are no princes, there are no earls, no dukes, no barons or baronesses, etc. What becomes kind of the aristocracy? Like in our world. Money and power. The higher up in the Ministry of Magic you are, what? The more perks, the more people defer to you. It's the modern aristocracy. Okay? So, we find out there is a plot. Pages 7, 8, and 9 has to do with the Quidditch World Cup. Has something to do, page 8, with Harry Potter. Because Pettigrew says it can be done without Harry Potter, my lord. And Voldemort said, without Harry Potter, Page 9, Wormtail. Or Voldemort, top of the page. I could use another wizard. That is true. We don't know what he's talking about. We don't find out until almost the end of the book. Wormtail, it makes sense. Laying hands on Harry Potter would be so difficult. He is so well protected. What does he mean by laying hands on Harry Potter?
Harming,
How would we describe that usually today?
harming somebody.
Okay, what do they want to do? Kidnap him. Why doesn't he say kidnapping Harry Potter would be so difficult when that's what they want to do? Why laying hands on? Why that terminology?
Well, in the first book, whenever Voldemort or Professor Quirrell puts hands on Harry Potter, that's whenever he experiences pain and suffering and
True.
ultimately,
So that would imply that Voldemort can't lay hands on him,
yeah.
but here kind of implies can. What else about that terminology?
You want to say more than that?
It means much more than just that. In Christian circles, that's very specific language. You lay hands on someone not to abduct them, you lay hands on someone to heal. Okay? And I think she's doing this intentionally. Because later on we're going to hear, not in this book, one of the next books, we're going to hear the language being used by Voldemort and his supporters of getting people to join their side. We're going to hear the language of conversion. They're literally going to say, until someone is converted. Okay? So she's loading this religious language in the books. It'll be difficult. Why? He's now so well protected. So you'll go get me a substitute. Notice, we've been told, top of that page, any wizard can do. Doesn't have to, whatever it is they want to do, any wizard will work. we don't find out until the end what the specific purposes they need Harry, okay? So, Voldemort accuses Wormtail of wanting to escape, wanting to run away and such. Wormtail says, never. Top of 10. I have my reasons for using the boy, as I have already explained to you, and I will use no other. I have waited 13 years. Now, what did we assume, what did you assume, when you heard that prophecy in the previous book? The servant of the Dark Lord's been changed 12 years. He will, he's free, he'll go back, the Dark Lord will rise. Who was that servant? Peter Pettigrew. Okay? Is it?
I don't think so.
So, page 10, towards just after the middle of the page. By that time, my faithful servant will have rejoined us. I thought the faithful servant was the one that was in prison for 12 years and is now released. I am a faithful servant. See, Rowling's making it unclear by having this language here. Wormtail, I need somebody with brains. Ouch. Somebody whose loyalty has never wavered. And you unfortunately fulfill neither requirement. I found you. I found you. Not you found me. I found you. I brought you back, essentially. Okay? So they keep talking. Frank Bryce comes in. They talk to Frank a little bit. Frank realizes this guy can talk to snakes. And Voldemort calls him a muggle, page 14. Frank Bryce says, turn around, face me like a man, why don't you? Okay? He says, but I'm not a man. I'm much, much more than a man. What does he mean by that? The thing I put on the board last week. He is a superman, an uber mensch. He is more. He is not bound by the normal laws and mores that society imposes upon us. Okay? In his mentality. He has gone beyond good and evil, right? And Avada Kedavra. 200 miles away, Harry wakes up and his scar is hurting. And Harry thinks, was that a dream? Now, that can make a reader think it was a dream. Very few do, however. Okay? So, what does Harry start to think about this dream? Notice, as he thinks about it, he starts forgetting it. He only remembers snippets. So he starts going through his mind, I should tell somebody. Who should I tell?
He goes through his list of friends.
He goes through his list of friends. What will Hermione say?
Read a book.
Read a book. Go to the library. Get on the internet, What will Ron say? No help. Because, Ron's really going to be help. McGonagall? Dumbledore? Who does he finally arrive at?
Sirius Black.
Why? Because he has a godfather now. He'll understand. So he writes to Sirius. 24 and 25. Okay? We find out they've been corresponding. Okay? Talks about Dudley's diet not going so well. Aunt found him smuggling donuts and such. Dudley is described, was it the previous book or was it this book? No, it was the previous book, as the size of a baby killer whale. Okay, pretty large. But notice now he's dieting. We're not going to hear anything else about Dudley's transformation until we get to book 5, in which he's now the Southeast boxing champion in England for his age. So he's gotten ripped. Okay? So he mentions his scar, says, just want to know if you knew anything about it. He gets an invitation. Okay? From Molly Weasley to go to the Quidditch World Cup. And Harry talks with Vernon and Petunia about that. They agree. He gets letters from Ron, Hermione, etc. Christmas presents. He goes back to the burrow. I'm skipping a whole bunch. Goes by flu powder to the Dursleys. Okay? How does flu powder work again? Chimneys and fireplaces. A lot of people in England, when they stopped using coal for burning, closed up their fireplaces when they brought in internal heat radiators and things like that. So the the Weasleys think there is an open working fireplace so that they can pop into it. They pop into the wall. How do they get out?
Mr. Weasley blasts it open.
You know, plaster everywhere. Okay? Fred and George pull a joke on Dudley. They get him to eat some tongue toffees. And just before Harry leaves, I'm skipping a lot, 48. It's just Harry and Mr. Weasley. Ron goes through, and Harry turns to the Dursleys and says, well, bye then. They didn't say anything. Harry moved toward the fire, but just as he reached the edge of the hearth, Mr. Weasley grabs him by the shoulder and stops him. Harry said goodbye to you, Mr. Weasley says to the Dursleys. Didn't you hear him? Harry, it doesn't matter. Honestly, I don't care. Mr. Weasley does not remove his arm, however, from Harry's shoulder. You aren't going to see your nephew until next summer, he said to Uncle Vernon in mild indignation. Surely you're going to say goodbye. What is Arthur showing us about himself, first of all?
He values family.
He values family. What else?
Basic manners.
Basic manners. Common courtesy. Common means it should be, in Arthur's mind, shared among all people. That when someone leaves your home and they're not going to be around for a long time, you at the very least do what?
Say goodbye.
Goodbye. See you later, that is, they will return. So that tells us about him. What is he trying to do to the Dursleys?
Correct their behavior.
Exactly. He's trying to correct their behavior. I think, I could be wrong, I think Rowling does this because, again, she believes now, she has very good reason to believe, most of her readers, when they start these books, are 10, 11, 12 years old. And so as they read them, as they grow up, what is happening to them internally? They're adopting some of what they see in here. That is, she's teaching basic manners, common courtesy to her young readers. That you should do what? When someone says hello to you, you should respond. When someone leaves, you should say goodbye. When someone puts a hand out, you should shake it, etc. Okay? She's having Mr. Dursley teach Mr. Weasley teach the Dursleys consideration, common manners in terms of how they interact with Harry. Why does Harry say, it doesn't matter, honestly, I don't care? Okay, it's 14 now, almost.
He grew up with it.
He's used to this. He's dealt with neglect all his life. When Harry says, I don't care, what does he mean? He literally doesn't care. It's like he leaves, throws him the bird. Harry needs some of that too. He needs some of that quote unquote training in manners. That's part of, I think Rowling is suggesting, having a well-organized mind. It's how we interact with others. Uncle Vernon's face worked furiously. Because what's poor Vernon dealing with? Put yourself in poor Vernon's shoes.
Kid's tongue is just everywhere.
It's going to be very shortly. And he's got a freaking hole in his living room. And he's thinking, oh my God, this is going to be expensive to fix. He's not thinking it's going to get magically fixed. The idea of being taught consideration. Notice, he understands what Arthur Weasley's trying to do. He's trying to guilt him into showing some affection for Harry. The idea of being taught consideration by a man who had just blasted away half his living room wall seemed to be causing him intense suffering. Like, dude, what are you doing? But Mr. Weasley's wand was still in his hand. That would be like someone pointing a shotgun at you saying, you know, you really ought to say goodbye. It's like, goodbye. Have a nice... Goodbye then. See you, says Harry. Notice, Harry responds. There's a reciprocal act going on. And he puts one foot forward, and then he hears the gagging behind him. Okay? Mr. Weasley has to fix Dudley, he has to fix the wall, etc. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, we're going to skip most of. That chapter is probably most important because what do we learn about Percy?
He's in the Ministry of Magic.
He now works at the Ministry of Magic. He is a junior assistant working for whom? Mr. Crouch. Bartemius Crouch Sr. Okay? And, you know, it's all about cauldron thicknesses and stupid little bureaucratic nonsense. Okay? Which tells us the Ministry of Magic is just like any other government, you know, in the world. The Portkey, chapter 6. Okay? How are they getting to the Quidditch World Cup? The Portkey. We have a new method of transportation. So you can travel by flying car, you can travel by apparition, you can travel by broom, you can travel by flute powder, now you can travel by a portkey. You use the spell, you turn this into a portkey, whoever touched it gets taken to wherever that is GPSed to, so to speak. Okay? Who do they meet at Ottery St. Catchpole, getting ready to take the portkey? Yes, Cedric and Amos Diggory. Okay? Where have we seen Cedric?
He's a seeker for Hufflepuff.
He's a seeker for Hufflepuff. Hufflepuff. Losers, right? But what does Cedric have going for him? He's good looking. All the girls are like, oh, you know. So, what happened in Harry's Quidditch match against Hufflepuff? He fainted because the Dementors fell off his broom. Okay? Page 72. Right in the middle of the page. Merlin's beard. Harry Potter? Yeah. Ced's talked about you, of course. Told us all about playing against you last year. I said to him, Ced, that'll be something to tell your grandchildren. You beat Harry Potter. Notice Harry doesn't have a reply. He fell off his broom, Dad. I told you. It was an accident. Does that make it sound any better? No. Yeah, but you didn't fall off, did you, son? I threw in the sun. Why? Why did I throw in that son part?
Because he's proud of his kid.
Keep going. What do parents often do, too often, through their children? They live vicariously in them. Okay? Is it because your parents, want you to achieve all this stuff and do all this stuff so that you have a better life than they had? Yes, to a large extent. Is it also because they want you to not make the mistakes we want you to not make the mistakes we made? Yes. Is it because we want to experience kind of through you what you're experiencing? Yes. Okay? Always modest, Star said. Always the gentleman. But the best man won. I'm sure Harry'd say the same, wouldn't you, Harry? One falls off his broom, one doesn't. Doesn't matter that Cedric's not, bothered by 100 Dementors hovering down below, pointing up, kind of like, the ring, bring us the ring, to mix and mash. Mr. Weasley, notice, tries to stop this situation. So, they touch the port key, and they go off to the Quidditch World Cup. We meet Ludo Bagman and Barty Crouch. Describe Ludo Bagman.
Stout.
What do you mean by stout?
The way they described him in his old uniform, he's definitely small, round.
Former Quidditch star. Think today, former soccer star, former football star, former basketball star. Look at Charles Barkley today to Charles Barkley when he played with Michael Jordan. Not all the same, okay? Rather round in the middle, okay? What about Barty Crouch?
Very well put together.
He looks like your quintessential Englishman. If he could have a bow tie with his, cloak and robe and everything, he probably would. Probably the glasses, the hair slicked back. We're going to skip a bunch. What's Barty Crouch's job? And what's Ludo Bagman's job?
Bagman is in the sports industry.
Sports. Crouch?
It's like international cooperation.
International magical cooperation. In other words, he's a what? He's a diplomat. Okay? So, we're going to skip a bunch. Go to 98. Harry meets Winky. Okay? Another house elf. Belongs to Barty Crouch. And Harry thinks it's Dobby and explains, it's Winky. And Winky says, "You is surely Harry Potter." Harry says, "Yes." He talks, "How's Dobby doing? How's freedom suiting him?" He says, "Meaning no disrespect," Winky says, "I was not sure you did Dobby a favor, sir, when you were setting him free." "Why? What's wrong with him?" "Freedom is going to Dobby's head. Ideas above his station. Can't get another position." What does that mean, can't get another position? What
Can't find work.
can't find work. What kind of work do house elves normally do?
Slaves.
They're slaves. You don't knock on a door and say, "Hello, sir, I'd like to be your slave." Because he's free. Okay? We do find out Dobby does get work later on, and paid, and vacation, and time off, and health.
Even negotiated down.
Has a little bit to learn about the wizarding world. And then we see the Malfoys come in. And they take seats near the Weasleys. We get Harry and Draco's little interchange. Bottom of 100, top of 101. We get this description of Draco's mother. His mother was blonde too, that is, like Draco, and like Draco's father. Notice that it's a characteristic all three of them have. And Lucius Malfoy is tall, and Narcissa, her name tells us everything, is tall, blonde. What image are we getting? The Aryan race. Okay, this is part of the Malfoy, bad faith. This is why I brought up, this Nietzsche, very Hitlerian in that sense. They're not Nazis. Don't make that mistake, okay? But she would have been nice looking if she hadn't been wearing a look that suggested there was a nasty smell under her nose. What's the nasty smell under her nose? Ew, the Weasleys. Being with the riffraff, okay? So we hear conversation between Arthur and Malfoy and Cornelius Fudge. Okay? Describe Cornelius Fudge. He's the minister of magic. What else? Is he good at his job? No.
He does things just so you can see it.
Say that again?
He does things just for surface level.
He does things for surface level. Translate today's like politics. He does what?
The bare minimum.
the bare minimum, but if there were cameras, he'd be there. Why? He wants to be seen, and this is going to come out even more later, he wants to be seen doing something. Is he doing something when he's not seen? That is he taking care of the business of the Muggle, the wizarding world in Great Britain? Because he's only Minister of Magic in Great Britain. He's not Minister of Magic for Europe, or France, or Germany, or any of those other countries. Okay? We see the actual Quidditch Cup, which I'm not going to spend any time on. Go to after the Quidditch Cup, chapter The Dark Mark. Got 14 minutes. Let's see here. Mr. Weasley gets up Harry and Ron, and they run out of the tent, page 119. As they're running, they're heading towards the forest. We see a crowd of wizards, tightly packed, moving together with wands pointing straight upward, was marching slowly across the field. Harry squinted at them. They didn't seem to have faces. Then he realized their heads were hooded, their faces masked. High above them, floating along in midair, 4 struggling figures were being contorted into grotesque shapes. It was as though the masked wizards on the ground were puppeteers, and the people above them were marionettes, operated by invisible strings. 2 of the figures were very small. Who are these figures?
The humans that you are.
It's the Roberts family who owns the property, okay? Mother and father and 2 small children. More wizards are joining the marching group. Tents crumpled and fell as they march on along. Floating people are suddenly illuminated. And Harry realizes who they are. One of the marchers below flipped Mrs. Roberts upside down with his wand. Her nightdress fell down to reveal voluminous drawers, her underwear, and she struggled to cover herself up as the crowd below her screeched and hooted with glee. Ron, that's sick. Okay, has Mrs. Roberts suffered any harm? No. No physical harm. Has she suffered mental distress, emotional distress? Yes, she has. Okay? That is really sick. They keep running. They make their way to the woods. Okay? They run into Malfoy, the younger, Draco. Malfoy says some stuff about Ron, says some stuff about Hermione. What did he say about Hermione in book 2 that caused all hell to break loose? Called her a mudblood. Okay? Mudblood has a our world corollary. I used to say it in class. I've stopped because of something happened a couple years ago. And the reason I said the real world corollary, which I'm not going to use, but you can probably imagine what it is because saying it in our world has the exact same effect that this word has in the, keep wanting to say muggle world, in the wizarding world. It is the most offensive term, which is why Ron tries to curse Malfoy. It's interesting, by the way, it's Ron who tries to curse Malfoy and not the others. We're being told there's already something between, at least on Ron's part, towards Hermione there, okay? So, they leave from Malfoy. After Malfoy explains to them, Granger, they're after muggles. Top of 122. Do you want to be showing off your knickers in midair? Because if you do, hang around. They're moving this way. Harry, Hermione's a witch. Have it your own way, Potter. If you think they can't spot a mudblood, stay where you are. And that's when Ron, watch your mouth, you know. What does he mean? Do you think they can't spot a mudblood? Can you physically see a difference between Hermione and Ron?
No.
So what does he mean? Do they have, internal quote-unquote mudblood detectors? Internal ancestry detectors? Does everybody take ancestry, you and me, or DNA 23 or whatever they are? So, They go off into the woods, and you hear people talking. We're going to skip a bunch. Pages 128, 129. They come to a halt in a little clearing. Hermione thinks maybe they've just been drinking. That is, the people tormenting the Roberts. But she breaks off abruptly. Harry and Ron look around quickly too. They thought they heard someone staggering towards their clearing. That is, they hear twigs snapping and stuff in the trees. Footsteps come to a halt. Harry cries, "Hello?" There's silence. He feels like there's somebody moving just beyond his vision. Who's there? And then they hear Mors Mordre. Okay? What the? And they look up, and Harry sees this big skull rising into the sky, comprised of what looked like emerald stars with a serpent protruding from its mouth like a tongue. As they watched, it rose higher and higher. Suddenly, the wood all around them erupted with screams. Harry calls again, "Who's there?" Hermione says, "Let's move, Harry." She explains it's the Dark Mark. Notice, Harry doesn't know what this is. Why not?
You've learned about
Keep going. He's never opened a book he hasn't had to. And they haven't read about Dark Marks yet. Okay? Hermione has. It's you know whose sign. Okay? And notice, just before all of these fully grown wizards and witches get ready to fire with their wands, Harry, without pausing to think, yells, "Duck!" Does he just drop to the ground? No, he pulls them both down. Okay? And that's when you hear the was stupefied. Okay? Well, who all is there? I don't mean everybody. Who are the important characters we see again? Some we kind of meet early, more for the first time.
Crouch.
Barty Crouch, Amos Diggory,
Mr. Weasley and Fudge.
Mr. Weasley, Fudge, okay? 152. They've got Winky, Crouch's house elf. This cannot be. He moves around, there's Diggory with Winky. "No point, Mr. Crouch," Diggory says. "There's no one else there." Diggory, embarrassing. I mean, Barty Crouch itself, I mean to say. Weasley, "Come off it, Amos. You don't seriously think it was the elf. The Dark Mark's a wizard sign. It requires a wand." She has one. What? Look. Whose wand is it? Harry's. Just then, Ludo Bagman appears. Okay. Barty, Bagman asks Barty, "Where have you been? Why weren't you at the match?" What's that introducing? Why wasn't he there? Okay. They keep talking about the Dark Mark and such. Diggory talking to Winky, 134. "As you see, elf, the Dark Mark was conjured here a short while, and you were discovered moments later, right beneath it. An explanation. I was not doing it as that. You were found with a wand. That's mine," Harry says. "That's mine." What? "My wand. I dropped it," repeated Mr. Diggory in disbelief. "You dropped it? Is this a confession? You threw it after..." Mr. Weasley. "Amos, think who you're talking to." What does he mean by that?
What on earth?
This is the kid who was nearly killed by him. Why would he do that? Okay? "Harry, I didn't drop it. I missed it right after we got into the wood." So, he says to Winky, "You found the..." Okay? They keep talking. Page 36. This is where the important part is. So Mr. Diggory says, you've been caught red-handed, elf, caught with the guilty wand in your hand. Arthur again tries to get Amos to think before he speaks. He says, think about this, Amos. Precious few wizards know how to do that spell. Where would she have learned it? In other words, she wasn't born, however house elves come into being. It's not something she would just know on her own. So Mr. Crouch finishes the idea that Arthur begins. Perhaps Amos is suggesting that I routinely teach my servants to conjure the dark mark. Now, what do we know at this point about Barty Crouch Sr.? Nothing really. No, not at all. That shows us Amos is afraid of him. Okay? You have now come very close to accusing the two people in this clearing who are least likely to conjure that mark. The two people least likely. Harry Potter and me is what he's suggesting. Not Arthur Weasley, not you. What Crouch is saying is Arthur Weasley, maybe. Amos Diggory, maybe. But not me. I suppose you are familiar with the boy's story. Like, duh, everybody is. And I trust you remember little, enigmatic, the many proofs I have given over a long career that I despise and detest the dark arts and those who practice them. We don't know at this point what the hell he's talking about. Anyway, I never. If you accuse my elf, you accuse me. Where else would she have learned to conjure? Oh, she could have picked it up anywhere. Weasley. Precisely, Amos. In other words, that's the door. Open it. Run through it. Back off what you are suggesting. So Arthur asks, where did you find Harry's wand? I was finding it there, sir, she says, in the trees. You see, Amos, she didn't conjure the dark mark. Somebody else did, and then dropped the wand. That leaves a new problem, right? Who conjured the dark mark? Okay, so let's skip a bunch. They go back to the campsite. Ron asks, what's that dark mark thing? Hermione says, I told you. Then Mr. Weasley, 142, with a couple minutes left. He gives Ron a little history. Again, if he'd pick up a history book once in a while, he probably would have known this. You know, Luna's followers sent the dark mark into the air whenever they killed. Okay? Think of Hitler putting a swastika. The terror it inspired. You have no idea. You're too young. We're going to hear that phrase repeated. We already heard it once, at least, in Azkaban. When Lupin told Harry, I don't know, this is advanced magic. You're too young for this. And Harry's like, try me. And he does the Patronus charm. Just picture coming home and finding the dark mark hovering over your house. That is, you saw that over your house, and what do you automatically know?
You know that someone's dead.
Yeah. It's like the thing left after the killer has done the deed. Okay? Silence. Bill mentions the Death Eaters. Harry, Death Eaters? What are Death Eaters? It's what you know whose supporters called themselves, says Bill. I think we saw what's left of them tonight, the ones who managed to keep themselves out of Azkaban. Mr. Weasley, we can't prove it was them. That is, we can't prove that it was these people who tormented the Robertses who did the dark mark. Probably was. Ron, yeah, I bet it was. And he mentions Draco. You know his dad was there. Okay. Harry, and I'm going to stop with this question. But what were Voldemort's supporters? Everybody flinches. Sorry. What were they up to? Levitating muggles. What was the point? Okay. We'll stop there and come back. I'll put up the quizzes over Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban I'll give you a few days. They won't be due till probably Friday of this week. In case you want to